While people enjoy winter holidays and exchange gifts, brands make enormous amounts of money. It may be hard to believe, but a significant part of what we consider Christmas traditions was actually invented by marketers. And today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Who invented Santa Claus? Today, it feels like a kind old man with a gray beard and a red hat has been bringing gifts to children since ancient times. In a certain sense, that's true. His prototype was Saint Nicholas the Wonder Worker, who lived in the 3rd or 4th century AD in what is now modern-day Turkey. According to legend, one day he gave a full purse of money to a poor peasant who couldn't afford dowries for his daughters. That's how the tradition began. But the modern version of this story is actually quite recent. The first mention of the name Santa Claus dates back to 1,822 inches, the famous poem A Visit from St. Nicholas, better known as The Night Before Christmas, by the American writer Clement Clarke Moore. The first visual depictions of Santa appeared in the 1,860 seconds. They were created by an illustrator named Thomas Nast, but Santa's modern appearance didn't fully take shape until the 1,930 seconds. And for that, we have Coca-Cola to thank. In the early 1,930 seconds, Coca-Cola was actively promoting its brand during the winter months. The task was to create a warm, cozy, and comforting image associated with the product. For this purpose, the company hired an artist of Swedish origin, Haddon Sundblom. It was Sundblom who created the iconic image of a rosy-cheeked, smiling old man with a white beard. The first Coca-Cola advertisement featuring Santa Claus appeared just before Christmas in 1931 in the Saturday Evening Post magazine. After that, it spread across the largest printed publications in the United States. For the next 30 years, Sundblom painted a new Santa Claus illustration for Coca-Cola every Christmas. At first, he used his friend, a former sales agent, as a model. After his friend passed away, Sundblom began painting Santa using his own reflection in a mirror. No one originally planned to turn this image into a universal standard. It just happened naturally. Santa turned out to be incredibly successful. By the way, there's a popular belief that Santa's red outfit with white trim was also invented by Coca-Cola. That's not entirely true. Officially, the red color is a reference to the red Episcopal robes worn by Saint Nicholas himself. And the fact that these colors happen to match Coca-Cola's brand palette was simply good fortune. Still, one could reasonably assume that if Santa had originally been backed not by Coca-Cola, but by Pepsi, a perfectly suitable blue version of the legend would have been found just as easily. More than 60 years later, Coca-Cola created another advertising masterpiece, one without which several generations around the world can no longer imagine Christmas and New Year's celebrations. In 1995, the television network ABC aired a commercial titled "Holidays Are Coming." Many people can still recite it almost word for word. In the ad, Coca-Cola trucks drive along snowy roads, symbolizing the arrival of Christmas. By that time, red had already firmly established itself as the color of winter holidays, so no one needed an explanation for why the trucks were red. They were decorated with bright lights to enhance the sense of magic, and the winter landscapes were deliberately made to resemble classic Christmas postcards. On the sides of the trucks appeared the very same Santa Claus created by Haddon Sundblom. When the commercial first aired, it became immediately clear that this was something more than just an advertisement. The visuals, the music, which, by the way, was written specifically for this commercial, and the overall atmosphere of anticipation struck a perfect emotional chord. Viewers wrote letters and flooded phone lines, trying to find out where they could see the red truck caravan in real life. Soon, Santa's trucks actually began touring real cities, where they were welcomed by crowds of children and adults alike. This is very likely the most popular Christmas advertisement of all time. And for those who saw it as children, it became one of the core visual symbols of the holiday season. In the early 2000s, for millions of people, spotting a red Coca-Cola truck on the street became the long-awaited sign that the holidays were truly approaching. It's worth noting that this is far from the only Christmas commercial that made history. One famous example is the 1,996 M&M's commercial titled "They Do Exist." In the ad, the red and yellow M&M's discover that Santa Claus is real and Santa, in turn, is no less surprised to see them. Over time, Christmas commercials turn into full-fledged and fairly expensive holiday short films, whose premieres are anticipated by entire countries. As we now know, Santa Claus doesn't work alone. Another canonical Christmas character is Rudolph. It would be logical to assume that he comes from ancient northern folklore or old pagan legends. But no, Rudolph is also a product of marketing. In 1939, a young writer named Robert L. May, who worked as an in-house copywriter for the American department store Montgomery Ward, received an assignment to write a short story for a small booklet. The booklet was meant to be distributed for free to children while their parents shopped during Christmas sales. This simple marketing tactic was designed to attract new customers. At the same time, May's wife was seriously ill, and to distract his 4-year-old daughter from worrying about her mother, he came up with a rhyming story about a small reindeer with a shiny red nose. Thanks to this glowing nose, Rudolph was able to light the way for Santa Claus's sleigh. May found inspiration at the zoo, where he often took his daughter. At first, the marketing department doubted the idea. They felt that a red nose carried unpleasant associations, specifically alcoholism. But with the help of humorous sketches of the reindeer drawn by a colleague, the writer convinced the marketers to give it a try. The gamble paid off. Rudolph quickly became extremely popular with children. During Christmas of 1939 alone, more than 2 million copies of May's book were distributed. In 1946, Montgomery Ward's management made an unusually generous decision and transferred the copyright for Rudolph to his creator. May published several sequels and even recorded the story on vinyl. But Rudolph's true fame came in 1949, when music was added to the story. The song, performed by country singer Gene Autry, eventually became one of the most famous Christmas songs of all time, standing alongside Jingle Bells and Last Christmas. Rudolph went on to have a remarkable career. He became the main character of animated and live-action films and evolved from a promotional Christmas gimmick into the second most recognizable holiday character after Santa himself. Another Christmas tradition, sending greeting cards, also began as a purely commercial initiative. To a large extent, this custom exists thanks to the Hall brothers, who founded a company called Hallmark in 1910. They were the first to launch mass production of greeting cards. The Hall brothers standardized the now familiar folded format 148 by 105 millimeters, with a fold down the middle. This detail mattered. Before that, many people felt uncomfortable writing personal messages on postcards, since anyone could read them. The folded cards solved this problem. Over time, greeting cards became valuable holiday keepsakes and collectible items. Some featured artwork by great painters, including Picasso, Cézanne, Gauguin, and Van Gogh. And Salvador Dali created a special Christmas series for Hallmark that instantly became a bestseller due to its provocative style. Another Christmas innovation from the Hall brothers was wrapping paper, and it was invented entirely by accident. On Christmas Eve of 1917, they suddenly ran out of regular wrapping material. They had no choice but to use sheets of decorative colored paper originally purchased for making envelopes. Customers loved the idea. The following year, the company began producing decorative wrapping paper on purpose, the very paper without which we can no longer imagine Christmas gifts under the tree. Hallmark also played a major role in shaping canonical Christmas movies. What started as a small family business grew significantly throughout the 20th century. Today, Hallmark owns several television channels. Movies are produced specifically for them, to the point that the genre itself is often called a Hallmark movie. The plot of these films is almost always the same. Strong, independent protagonists are torn between their careers on one side and cozy family holiday traditions on the other. In the end, they choose warmth, rediscover their love for Christmas, and stroll through streets filled with glowing shop windows. Decorated storefront windows themselves are also a relatively recent invention. The tradition originated in New York City. It is believed that the world's first Christmas window display using mannequins was created in 1874 for Macy's department store on 6th Avenue. The display was based on scenes from the rather dark novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, which told the story of slavery in the United States before the Civil War. Very quickly, Macy's window displays became a city landmark. People traveled from all over the world just to see them. Other stores across New York adopted the idea, then across the United States, and eventually around the globe. The tradition of Thanksgiving Day parades, which marked the opening of the Christmas season in the U.S., was also introduced by Macy's marketing department. The first parade took place in 1924. The 101st parade, held in 2025, featured nearly 7,000 participants and attracted around 3 million spectators. All right, but what about giving sweets for Christmas and New Year? Was that invented by brands too? Yes, but not just any sweets. The red and white striped candy cane actually has a long history. According to legend, in the 17th century, a choir master at Cologne Cathedral ordered this candy from a confectioner to keep young choir boys quiet during church services. However, across the ocean, the striped candy appeared only in the mid-19th century. At that time, America was experiencing another wave of religious revival, and the candy acquired symbolic meaning. The white color represented purity and the Immaculate Conception. The red stripes symbolized the blood shed on Golgotha. And the shape resembled the letter J, standing for Jesus. Thanks to the hook at the end, candy canes also became convenient Christmas tree decorations, easy to hang, easy to remove, and easy to eat. Traditionally, the red stripes were peppermint or cinnamon flavored, while the white parts were plain sugar. Today, they are most often mint. A true breakthrough came in the 20th century when Bob's Candies introduced several key confectionery technologies. They were the first to wrap candy canes in cellophane. And most importantly, they invented the so-called Keller machine, which allowed candy sticks to be bent into their iconic shape without breaking. After that, striped candy canes entered mass production and became a staple in nearly every American home. Another Christmas tradition that consistently ranks high in public polls was created by the American coffee chain Starbucks. Since 1997, Starbucks has released red holiday cups for the winter season. Fans line up for them every year. At the peak of the brand's popularity, the red cup was like a new iPhone today. For example, during Christmas 2014, it was posted on social media on average once every 14 seconds. And finally, one more major holiday phenomenon. At this point, it's obvious commercial sales. In the United States, they traditionally take place on Black Friday. This event has no single creator. It is believed that discounting leftover goods was first practiced in 1830 by the owner of one of the earliest Parisian department stores. But the idea itself is much older. Christmas markets appeared in Germany as early as the 15th century. Since then, retailers have used every possible trick to attract customers. The term Black Friday itself is relatively recent. In 1966, police officers in Philadelphia used it to describe massive traffic jams following Thanksgiving. According to another version, the name comes from old accounting traditions, where profits were written in black ink and losses in red. Friday was black because businesses finally moved into profit. There is a certain irony in the fact that the most domestic and family-oriented holiday in the Western world was largely constructed by people who thought about comfort and human warmth last, and primarily wanted to make money. But when it comes to traditions, it may not matter where they originally came from. Santa no longer sells anything. He just delivers gifts. Rudolph does not advertise department stores. And a good Christmas movie is not ruined by the creator's desire to sell related merchandise. When a child in the 1,990 seconds watched a commercial with mysterious red trucks driving through a snowy forest, they were not thinking about soda. They were thinking about a fairy tale. And that is what truly matters.